So, assalamu alaikum, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here today. I want to thank Dr. Fahad for this invitation to bring me over from Germany and to attend this wonderful conference. Over the last 2 days, we already heard many great lectures, and we attended great workshops addressing topics highly relevant for the future of Saudi economy, society, culture, and the whole development actually of the region, as Saudi Arabia, of course, is the driving force over here. So before I start, just a few questions to you. Do you know who was invited by the Ministry of Culture and Information to play the first ever cello concert live in public in Jeddah 2 years ago? Do you know who was the only concert cellist in Saudi Arabia for the last 3 years? Do you know who was the only cello teacher in Saudi Arabia for the last 3 years? Do you know who initiated the MISC German internship programming, bringing Saudi talent to Germany for education, internships, and actually creating jobs for them? Do you know who founded and initiated the first German-Saudi startup competition? Now an ongoing challenge every year. And do you know who brought the first Saudi startup delegation to Germany and the first German startup delegation to Saudi Arabia? It was me. I'm very happy to be back in this country. I have a rich history with this country, many rich connections, and it's just beautiful to see how this country develops. And today I take the chance and the opportunity to contribute a little further in this wonderful environment. Just a little bit about the background for myself. I'm a trained economist, and I worked in different consultancies. We saw McKinsey as one of the sponsors here. That's one of them, KPMG, PwC, and nowadays I work with a company called OCO Global, and we are specialized in trade and investment promotion, working with governments all over the world to help them to internationalize their locations. Bottom line is bringing in CapEx, creating jobs, and helping with economic development of locations. And we also have projects in Saudi Arabia, so here is also the connection. In my talk today, I want to touch a little bit this field that I'm working on right now, and that is so relevant for the future of this country, economic development based upon investment and trade. And nowadays, everything is changing. That's why the title, How Emerging Hybrid Industries Drive Shifts in Investment and Trade. Well, basically, there are 3 things I want to focus on today, and this is the change, mostly in investments, how companies move internationally, then the role of digital transformation, which creates completely new industries, has already, and that will go on, and we will create industries that don't exist yet. And further on, which role does the younger generation play in all of this? The so-called born globals, a generation of future leaders that thinks differently and that acts differently. And what impact does that have on the economy? Not only in Saudi Arabia, but all over the world. But because 60% of the Saudi population is below 30 years old, this is especially relevant for this country. And understanding this new generation is important to deal with them because they will not go away. They will be the future drivers of the economy, of society, and the whole country. So first of all, I want to start with this guy, Dr. Abdullah. Dr. Abdullah is a very particular case, and I will tell you why, and we come back to him throughout this presentation again and again. Some of you might know him, but I want to start with this. He grew up in Germany. He went to university at a mid-sized town in Germany. Not very exciting at this stage. He finished his studies. Then he realized, research in computer science is important. I can go a little further. He did this for another 4 years, got a PhD at the same university in Germany. Nothing special. Besides that, he started working in consultancy a little bit. Then he got a job after he was done in a small German consultancy working on international projects. But then something remarkable happened. This guy was on a really good track of becoming a professional in his career, in his section, in his sector, but he left it all. He came to Saudi Arabia to found a startup to solve a social problem. Now, at first glance, we don't understand why this happens, and also I don't know exactly what his motivation was, but he decided to do that, and that is the critical point. So he founded this company. They created a digital platform. They went out to keep this business running. For 3 years, they were collecting data, making customer experiences. And then a company from Dubai found it very interesting to deal with them, not because they were acting in the same field, but what they had was data and they had customer experience. And the company from Dubai acquired Dr. Abdullah's company, and the rest is history. The company I'm talking about that acquired his company was just acquired by Uber. I talk about Karim. He is one of the co-founders of Karim. And so his story is particular, but also the company that he was working for, and he is still pushing all over the world, Karim. We will come back to that at a later stage. So his history is very symbolic for what I want to talk about. First of all, FDI trends. This is the general world, how companies move from one country to another, increasing footprints, bringing in capital, bringing in value. And what we can see in general is the world is pretty much stable. When we look at the whole development, 2% compound annual growth rates over the last 9 years, this is basically nothing. But we will come to another point, not only where FDI flows come from, but particular for this region. It's interesting to see that 70% of the FDI inflow comes from just 10 countries. So from a country perspective, in this region, when you look at your competitors, and you look where can I attract companies from, you might want to prioritize based on this data. And the whole development in FDI is driven by tech companies. This is maybe not so surprising when we look at the big names that are displayed on the left-hand side of this slide. They are the ones that are dominating the lists, the rankings of publicly listed companies all over the world. The Apples, the Microsofts, the Amazons. A few years ago, decades ago, we had the Walmarts, we had the Exxon Mobils, we had the banks up there. They all lose share, they all lose track. Tech companies are the new leaders. And this can also be seen in FDI flows. So on the bottom, you see the increase from 9.4% to 13.6%. This is ongoing, and this will become more and more. So because of this whole development, technologies that are available today and are applied today were not present a few decades ago. But nowadays, technology drives everything, and that is also and technology also has this major influence, this disruptive influence on established industries, and they create new forms of industries, so-called hybrid industries. So first of all, to understand what exactly is a hybrid industry, so I take one definition, the intersection between physical industries and digital technologies. You can go along the whole sectors that you know about. Could it be agriculture, from farming, from working the land with a tractor, with a person, with a farmer, with a pen and pencil, writing down on paper what he did during the day and how much he grows and how much he gets of this. Nowadays, precision agriculture is high-tech. You have drone technology in it. You use satellite data, images. You use highly developed analytic tools to realize what is going on. You use Internet of Things. So all the machines are connected and talk to each other, and you have all your data on a dashboard at home while you sit in your bed before you go to bed. This is the new development in agriculture. Digital manufacturing is just the same. You see robots dancing around a factory, putting together welding and putting together elements for a car, for instance, for machinery. Not possible in the previous days. Same with smart transportation. Could be logistics, could be also mobility. And this is what's happening in a nutshell. Humans must adapt to collaborate with machines, and when that collaboration happens, the end result is stronger. Said by a director from MIT. I would not say the end result is stronger. This is rather a hypothesis to me. I would say it must be stronger because otherwise it's useless to work with machines. So, breaking this apart, it means you have humans and you have machines. But the thing is, the key challenge, how to bring them together. And this is not easy. Because let me ask you one thing. Please raise your hand if someone in school told you how to deal with robots. I don't think so. None of us told us that. Robots were there already in some decades ago, but in some companies developing them, some research activity was going on. But the size that we have today and this influence, this dominance of machinery, of smart machines, this is a big difference nowadays, and it will increase over the next years and decades as well. So that also has major implications on the educational system, because people have to find their roles in this new world. Jobs are taken over by machines, and people need to understand how to deal with machines, how to create them, and how to use them in a positive way to create value. And this is just an example of this whole digital transformation nowadays, how the whole economy and how our lives are dominated. And I just want to put up here 5 trends that we can already see. We don't talk about future trends that come up later and we don't even know about, but this is the world already today. We talk about continuous growth of big data. Nowadays, storing data is decentralized. From your hard drive on your computer, you're not restricted to this anymore. Nowadays, we have data centers. So big data means collecting large amounts of data that was not possible before, and we have to find a way to deal with that. Unlocking analytics, having algorithms in place to make use of data was there before, but analytics is developing very rapidly, so that people can make positive use and productive use of this huge amount of data. Customer experience takes center stage. Well, that seems a little bit off because the customer should always have priority. But this role is emphasized here because with all the machines taking over our lives, in the end, this is only meaningful if the customer, which is usually the human being using this machine, has a good experience. Having a machine that is very smart and can do things for you is great. But if you as a customer are not able to handle it correctly, or someone else told you how to handle it correctly, it's meaningless. Rise of the cloud, putting data up on the cloud, not being restricted to any limitations anymore. Having access to data from every point of the world. You can travel every country you want, you can be in Antarctica, you can be on the beach somewhere, you have access to your data. That creates huge opportunities. And this goes in the direction of the multiple digital platforms. When we look at, for instance, companies like Uber or Careem, they don't own assets anymore. They are platforms, digital platforms. The same with Hunger Station, or any other forms of these connecting platforms. It's all about bringing assets, bringing information, and bringing technology together so that people can make better use of that. And as we are standing here today, we have technology developments, such as the internet in general, social, mobile, cloud. We talked about this already, robotics, AR, VR, so many things are happening. But what happens after that? When we look at the next 10, 20, 30 years, a lot of things can develop, and it's very important to look at the scope of this. Because everybody that's sitting here, nowadays, we have a chance to have an influence on the future development. It's us creating this. It's not that it's happening passively somewhere from now. So what does it all have to do with the younger generation? Well, in the previous days, my parents did it. Well, they went to work to earn some money, to feed the family, and to make a better living. But nowadays, the next generation, they want to shape the world. This is not how they want to work anymore, right? This is technology that happens and that they can make use of. So also, now these machines replace people. So what we are ending up with And a lot of younger people dream about this. This is something like you can see here. You have a very pleasant work environment, you work on things you really like, you develop it, and hopefully you work in an environment, for instance, as Google does it. People are inspired by their work environment, and they are so much inspired that they actually like to go to work and spend a lot of time there, which of course in turn is good for the companies. So, I already mentioned the term born globals, but let's have a closer look at a few features that define them. There is no one single definition, but I think it's good to understand a little bit how they actually think and act. So they want to be connected at all times. Everybody's running around with a smartphone, and everybody wants to have access to information and wants to know what's going on. They're flexible and they're open to the world and then go out, and geographic boundaries don't matter anymore. I mean, think about Facebook, think about other social networks. They are not limited to one country anymore. And the new generation has access to technology and they grew up with it, so it's easier for them to adapt and use these technologies compared to previous generations. And to be honest, I must say I would consider myself rather on the younger side of a generation of society, but I still have problems dealing with new technologies. And when somebody gives me a new smartphone, I need a younger person to explain it to me. I can tell you this is also for me not very easy. Sharing ideas, being creative, instead of just doing something that somebody told you, is something else, and we will come back to that later. And among all of this, people want to be individuals. They don't want to be part of the mass anymore. And that has major implications of how they work and how they think and how they also have an impact on companies. Because born globals are the most educated generation that has ever been there. Meaning they have knowledge, they have insights, they have intelligence, and they also know how to use it in a certain way. So when we look at Maslow's hierarchy of needs, the born globals don't really care about physiological needs anymore, about safety needs. This is all taken care of. They are striving for self-actualization, basically becoming the person they want to be, living up to their full capacities. And using this whole understanding of born globals and applying this to a company context, the best example is looking at startups. Normally, when a company was founded, and coming from Germany, when we think about company owners and the normal mid-sized companies, it was founded by an engineer that had a great idea a long time ago, and then he was sitting around, playing around with the tools in order to create a product that created value for society. He could market it, and slowly and organically grew a company out of that. Born globals don't think like this. Forget about it. They want to go global rapidly, they want to do it at an earlier stage, and they want to do it faster. They don't just wait until slowly a company develops. And here are 3 examples of companies that are quite young, that are disruptive, and they work in fields of hybrid industries. We talked about Karim. Why is that a company acting in a hybrid industry? Technology comes together with transportation, and in the end you have a platform that uses the technology to bring people from A to B in a smarter and faster and better way. The success story, I don't need to explain it in this context here. Delivery Hero, a big company from Berlin, from my hometown. You know maybe the brands Talabat, Hunger Station, maybe big in Saudi, very small in the whole Delivery Hero universe. Because what they did was backed, of course, by venture capital money. When they started, they had this idea to disrupt the food delivery market. They came up with this platform, and the first thing they did was going global. They sent out teams in the first few weeks to specific markets all over the world in order to be the first ones. In order to have the first mover advantages, to create customer experience, to get the data, to improve their algorithms. so they can serve the customers in those markets with a better product. Everything was really fast. The same Zalando, European online fashion retailer, huge company. It's the #1 startup, prime startup from Germany. What they did was they put technology and fashion together. The world where you just go for shopping to a store is over. The world where you have certain online providers for fashion, not really good, no good customer experience. They fed in there. They saw the gap and they grew, and the figures speak for themselves. And just to go one step further, what's happening right now, the war for electric scooters. I don't see them in Riyadh on the streets, but when you go to any other place basically all over the world, the cities are flooded with e-scooters. Why is that? Because it's the same. For the e-scooters, every city in the world is a potential market, and you want to be the first one. Again, first mover advantage is very, very important. And when we just look at the two top companies, Lime and Bird, the amount of funding they got being started in 2017. Now Lime got $765 million in funding. This is crazy. The same for Bird. Jump, a brand by Uber, also playing in that field. Lyft. These are companies being founded by Born Globals and are driven by Born Globals. And this is a completely different approach than the old. And just as a side topic, I quickly want to touch upon also the organizational structure within companies, because this caters to the fact that Born Globals don't want to just sit there in a cubicle doing work, what they did, but somebody told them and they do it every day again. They want to be flexible and they want to have a very inspiring work environment. So what we have nowadays, mostly, let's say, is a matrix organization. You have a line manager and you have a project manager, for instance, or you have an industry manager and you have a country manager, and that all creates, two lines of interaction, and that's basically a matrix organization. That's similar, or basically the standard of organizations today. But that is also not flexible enough. And I just put up one example, the Helix organization. It's a new type of organizational form, and I'm pretty sure some sort of forms like this will evolve over time and become more present, and we will see it more and more. If you're interested in Helix organization, McKinsey just published a very, very good knowledge piece about this. You can download it in the internet for free. I can just recommend it. And what does it have to do with locations that want to attract companies and that want to develop economically? Well, you have to take care of a lot of things in order to make companies happy, to create an environment where they can thrive, where they can make profits, where they can grow. But working in this field of an investment attraction, I dealt with so many companies and so many locations all over the world, from Asia to the Middle East and Europe and also the US. And everywhere it's the same. The people factor becomes more and more important. It's all about talent. As a company can gain incentives to come somewhere, have a favorable regulatory environment, totally fine. But in the end, in the long run, they need the right people. And as a location, if you can make sure that you have talent in place, that's your success. So, just basically one slide of conclusion. I don't know what you got out of this, but this is what I could see. The technological change is inevitable. On the one hand side, it poses a threat to established industries. On the other hand side, it offers ample opportunities for other industries. But it's driven by Born Globals, and that eventually has a major effect on trade and FDI flows. That's from my side. Thanks a lot for your attention. Pleasure.